Well, howdy, y'all, and welcome to the Reel Backwaters, where the rods are always ready, the water runs deep, and the stories run even deeper. With your host, Daniel Woodcock, bringing you right into the heart of the Southeast, one cast at a time. Now, whether you're drifting down a lazy river in your yak, hunkered down in a John boat, or just dreaming about your next big catch from the comfort of your porch swing, this here's the place for you. We talk fishing, backwaters, bait, and a whole lot of grit. So grab your gear, crack open a cold one, and settle in. You're listening to the Reel Backwaters, where southern waters tell their tales. Let's get it rolling, y'all.
Hey, and welcome to the podcast. Man, it's been a minute since we did one. But we're changing up a few things here on the podcast. We're going strictly audio for right now. It will be uploaded to YouTube, Spotify, Apple, everything podcast-wise. So thank you for joining me, Daniel Woodcock, the host of the Reel Backwaters. Man, how hot has it been here in South Georgia? It's been hot, hot, hot. And we're talking about summer bass in the southern heat. It's outrageous. Man, you can't even give it out on the water without, sweating, being miserable, things like that. But what we're going to do in this segment is breaking down my ways of fishing for the hot summer bass in Southeast Georgia. And how you can find big bass still in the summer and get them to eat what you're throwing. So, with that being said, we're going to hop right into this. This Georgia heat, man, bass aren't just hanging out where they do in the springtime, right? Shallow, feeding up, getting ready to spawn. Man, you'll have to go a little deeper. I'm talking about like creek channels, brush piles, ledges, submerged timber, just everything submerged, right? Because they're tucked in thick lily pads, just away from that hot sun, getting shade, and just being just lethargic. Right, like they do in the deep wintertime here in the South. Hot water and cold water affect bass, if you don't already know. But yeah, it's that's where we find the bass during the summertime. If you got a pond or a small reservoir, even rivers and creeks, you can find lily pads, you can find submerged timber, you can find ledges, you can find creek channel swings, things like that. But most of the time, we're talking summertime fishing, especially during the heat of the day. If you're an early fisherman, you're going to have to get on the water about 5 or 5:30 and be off of there by 10 because that sun gets above them southern pine trees, and it's just outrageous, man. That stuff is like the inferno. So, yeah, we like the early morning fish and late afternoon. Maybe get on the water in the afternoon times around 7:30, 8 o'clock. Fish till about dark 30, what we call it. Down here is dark 30. Or as kids, as a southern kid, your mom and dad told you be home by when the street lights come on. So, but yeah, fishing early mornings, late afternoons is probably the best time to catch some of these southern bass down here. And not only that is, you getting out there before everybody else, before all the pleasure boaters, or after all the pleasure boaters have their time on the water, especially on these big reservoirs like Lake Lanier, Hartwell, Clarksville, Sinclair, things like that. But yeah, it's better to go deep and go shady, right? When we're fishing summertime, deep and shady is what we want to find these bass. But yeah, it's a challenging time for all of us fishing down here in the South, as far as trying to figure out what lures we want to throw for these summer bass, to where we want to find them, either on creeks, rivers, farm ponds, local ponds. If we had to travel anywhere, you know, we down here in the southeast Georgia, part of Georgia, we don't have the luxury of having big reservoirs close by, so we have to travel anywhere from 3 to 4 hours if we want to fish them. But yeah, let's talk about what baits I like to use, and here's what I like to throw that is hotter than a cast iron skillet on a blacktop. Is slow rolling big worms is my go-to during the dog days. What I call it down here in Georgia is the dog days of summer, because them gnats get around a dog's ass and they just swarm there, right? Then they want to get all up in your face after they've been around a dog's tail. But I like to throw big worms like old monsters, magnum trick worms. And I even have the ability to have a guy pour them directly out of his business, Mr. Tim Williams from Max Thunder Baits down in Jacksonville, Georgia. He poured me some big worms, curly tail worms at that, and even inserted a rattling in some of them to give it a little bit more vibration, if you will. But I throw most of these big worms on 4 to 5/0 hooks, maybe an 1/8 to a 1/4 ounce weight, depending on where I'm fishing, and just dragging them Texas rig style. And I in my Texas rig style, I like to peg them, because I don't like that big worm, to be floating up in the water column. I just like to peg that weight. Even if I have to go to, I call it a poor man's Carolina rig. What I'll do, I'll add 2 bobber stops, one to hold the weight, and then the other one below the weight that goes towards your knot, and it actually protects your knot a little bit too. Just a little tidbit there. But you could say if them fish are holding, the fish are holding 3 foot off the bottom, you can adjust that peg weight to more of a poor man's Carolina rig. But yeah, it's a summer staple for me to throw these big worms around brush piles, laydowns. I'll throw it in lily pads, submerged grass, things like that. So, but another bait I find as a go-to in fishing on a spinning reel, is finesse worms. Something, you go from big to small, right? And it depends on what the fish want that day. They might want something bigger profile. They might want something smaller profile. So I carry both in my kayak with me, and I like throwing a finesse worm, especially the Charlie Brewer slider worm. They have their own heads. It's called a slider head, and just kind of throw that on the bottom and kind of drag it and reel it a little bit. Drag it, reel it a little bit. If you're fishing, another summer bait, of course, is punching rigs or punching jigs, creature baits, things like that. Using 1 ounce to 2 ounce to punch through hydrilla, any matted vegetation, because the fish are going to get in that matted vegetation, because it's it helps them stay cool. And, bait fish are in and out of that vegetation all day long, so that there's not a whole lot of moving around. They're not burning calories like we call it in the human life to get fed, right? So, I don't throw punching jigs. I throw a punching rig. Creature baits, anything from any type of bug to a crawfish to things like that. Especially in the rivers down here, I fish a lot of crawfish because that's what's one of the staples is a crawfish down here in Georgia to our waterways. And then what else? I throw on my punch rig. I've got it set up. I throw a 7-11 rod, an 8 gear casting reel, and 50 to 60 pound reaction tackle braid in green. It's just my go-to. I've had good not access, but good success with it. So that's my punching rig. And the last thing I like to throw, especially early mornings, or late afternoon, is a good old purple or black buzz bait. I just love the buzz bait, how that thing sounds, and when the fish just comes up and slurps it. But yeah, they're easy to roll over. If you got submerged vegetation, you could throw them in lily pads as well. You can throw it over lay down structure. You can, if you got some submerged timber that you want to reel over, them fish are going to come out of that submerged timber and just explode on that buzz bait. Yeah, it's just one of them types of fishing, and not even talking about buzz bait, talking, frog fishing, things like that. There's ways to draw fish out of that vegetation, that submerged timber, them lay downs, and things like that. So whatever your top water bait is to go to, buzz baits, frogs, poppers, anything like that is just useful for especially low light hours, early morning, late afternoon, after that sun gets down over them trees and things like that. So here in Georgia, we have a lot of great waterways. And talking about waterways, especially down here in South Georgia, we got the Ogeechee River, the Canoochee River, the Hoopie River, the Ottawa River, the Satilla River, Little Satilla River. Then you got all these little backwater creeks, Little Lots Creek, Briar Creek. Talking about rivers, the Savannah River. The Savannah River is a whole body of water. It flows from way up north all the way to the Atlantic Ocean. But there's a lot of small creeks, Ebenezer Creek, things like that. And then, of course, you got your big water reservoirs like Lake Seminole, Lake Lanier. Seminole is heavy with vegetation and a lot of submerged timber. I call it the swamp area of Georgia, even though we have the Okefenokee Swamp down here. But it's a reservoir. It's made for punching and frogging. And maybe you could find some of them deep channel swings or something like that and throw some big worms down the edges of them creek channels. And then, of course, you got Lake Lanier, which is known for its spotted bass. So you're going to be searching for deep brush piles and things like that. Maybe get on an early morning top water bite when they're feeding, things like that. But overall, us here in South Georgia compared to Middle Georgia or North Georgia, we have a lot of farmland down here, and a lot of farmers use their ponds for agricultural reasons other than fishing to help with water supplies for cattle, irrigation, things like that. So if you have a chance and you see a pond, farm pond or something like that, just stop by the farmer's place and ask him, hey man, you mind if I fish? And just tell him that either you do catch and release or you just thought it was a good idea to ask him. Don't trespass. We find so many people trespassing nowadays that they think any body of water is actually a body of water you can fish, but there's a lot on private property. And check with your local county or city recreation department. They may have some local areas you may be able to fish. And here in Chatham County, I can tell you that the city of Savannah and Chatham County Parks and Recs, they have several different small lakes, small ponds that are good fishing. I've actually caught fish out of a lot of them. There's all kind of fish in them: brim, bass, crappie, catfish. So there's a lot of fish to be caught out there. And another thing about fishing the dog days of summer here is keeping cool while you fish and being smart about it. This is to go along with staying hydrated, wearing the proper clothing, wearing, keep out on the weather. Right now it's out here thundering, so these good old South Georgia storms pop up on you and just surprise you. So dress smart, don't overdress, wear stuff like colored clothes, wear sunglasses, sunscreen, wide brim hats. A lot of people don't realize that the back of your ears are exposed. Wearing just a regular, I call it a trucker's hat or a ball cap style, is back of your ears get burnt up. And that's one good place to start with skin cancers and things like that. I know the bite is going to be tough for these summer months, but just plan ahead. Get out early, go out late, depending on what your work schedule, what you do for work, what do you do for off time. Go early, go late, stay out of the good old sun during the hot parts of the day, and just be mindful of the heat. Heat strokes sneak up on people pretty quick. Not staying hydrated, not drinking the proper stuff in the hot weather. Water. I would suggest just drink water throughout your fishing trip, and then when you get off the water, maybe get you some Gatorade or Powerade or some type of BioLite to kind of rehydrate you, not dehydrate you, but rehydrate you. Things like that. So just stay safe on the water. Be careful out there. Always wear your PFD. We've got too many incidences this past year with people not wearing PFDs, getting out of the water, ended up not coming home to their loved ones, things like that. And so, hey, thank you for joining me on the Reel Backwaters podcast. and hopefully we can get more information out to you for the rest of the year. If you haven't, subscribe to my YouTube channel, the Reel Backwaters. You can find some videos on there, some techniques, some how-tos, some DIYs, things like that. Leave me a comment on any of the videos, and I'll comment back. You know, a lot of these bigger YouTubers don't ever comment back to their folks, and that kind of drives folks away from your channel. If you don't interact, you don't exist, right? So make sure you comment, give it a like, give it a subscribe. And until next time, tight lines, cool drinks, and early launch times. And I hope you have a great evening, a great day, a great week. Share this podcast with somebody that might be interested in listening to the podcast while they're waiting in traffic, go home or go to work, things like that. So as always, wear your PFD and fish on.